Princess Liara of Zinthara paced back and forth in the grand hall of her palace. The walls shimmered with light, and the floors reflected her every step. Zinthara was a planet of brilliance, with cities that reached the clouds and machines that moved like living beings. Everything about her world was precise, ordered, and predictable, everything except for her own restless spirit. Liara had always loved games, not the small ordinary games children played, but games of strategy and wit. She thrived when challenged, when the stakes were high, when her mind could race faster than anyone else's. Today was such a day. She was about to play a game against her cousin, Prince Zarin, known across the royal court for his cleverness and cunning. The royal hall was filled with nobles, advisors, and servants, all watching quietly. A crystal board floated between Liara and Zarin, its glowing lines forming an intricate web of paths and tokens. The game was called Mindweave, a challenge of logic, prediction, and risk. Whoever won could demand anything within reason from the loser, a tradition that often led to strange and humorous outcomes. "I hope you are prepared, cousin," Liara said, her voice calm but tinged with excitement. "I have been studying your patterns for weeks." Zarin smirked, his silver eyes gleaming. "And I yours. But let us see who truly thinks faster." The game began. Liara moved her token with careful precision, predicting Zarin's every choice. For a while it seemed she would win. The nobles whispered among themselves, impressed by her skill. Zintharans were taught to value intelligence above all, and Liara had been considered one of the sharpest minds of her generation. But Zarin had an unexpected trick. With a sudden move, he changed the course of the game completely. Liara's token became trapped in a loop of her own making. Her heart skipped a beat as she realized she had underestimated him. "No," she whispered, though only a small part of her feared admitting defeat. The crystal board pulsed and flashed, signaling the end of the game. Zarin's token had reached the final point. He had won. The hall fell silent. Every eye was on Liara, waiting for her reaction. "You have lost," Zarin said, bowing slightly. "And as the winner, I may claim my reward." Liara straightened her posture, trying to hide the sudden shock that coursed through her. "And what would that be?" she asked, though a small part of her already feared the answer. Zarin's smirk widened. "You, cousin, shall marry a human." The hall erupted in gasps. Liara's eyes widened in disbelief. "What?" she exclaimed. "A human? That is impossible." "It is neither impossible nor against the laws of our people," Zarin replied smoothly. "A bet is a bet. You chose to play, and you lost. According to tradition, this is your consequence." Liara's mind raced. Humans were not only from another planet, but they were also considered primitive, unpredictable, and sometimes dangerous. Zintharans had studied them from afar for centuries. They valued emotions over logic, took risks without planning, and could not understand the order of the universe. For Liara, the idea of marrying one seemed like the ultimate humiliation. I cannot," she stammered, though she knew that her protest would carry little weight. Zintharan law was absolute. Once a bet was lost, the loser had no choice. "You will," Zarin said, his voice firm. "It is your duty to follow the ruling. Your pride cannot change the law." Liara turned to her advisors, her expression desperate. "There must be another way. I can think of 1,000 challenges, games, or tasks. Surely this can be undone." The chief advisor, an older Zintharan named Valen, shook his head slowly. "Princess Liara, the law is clear. The ruling is binding. You may delay, but in the end you must obey. The council has already approved the decision." Liara sank into a seat, her mind whirling. Marrying a human, the idea seemed impossible to her. How could she, Princess of Zinthara, raised in elegance, intelligence, and precision, marry a creature so unpredictable and crude? "I refuse," she said, though her voice trembled slightly. "I will not go to Earth. I will not marry a human." "You will," Valen repeated softly with a hint of sadness. "And you must understand, this is not just a punishment. It is also a chance to learn. Humans are different, and differences can teach us many things." Liara glared, unwilling to admit that his words had a small effect on her. She stood abruptly, her robes flowing around her. I do not need to learn from them. I am a Zintheran. I know everything that matters. Zirin chuckled lightly, leaning back in his seat. You will learn, cousin, and perhaps in ways you cannot imagine. But first, you must go. Preparations began immediately. A special craft was readied to take Liara to Earth. The nobles and advisors busied themselves with schedules, protocols, and introductions. Liara, meanwhile, paced endlessly in her chamber, her mind a storm of anger, fear, and curiosity. Her chamber overlooked the city of Zinthera, a sea of lights and motion. Everything was so perfect here. Orderly, predictable, safe. And yet the very thing that made her world great now felt like a cage. Earth, with its chaos and unpredictability, awaited her. Why must it be me? She whispered to herself. Why not another cousin? Why not anyone but me? Valen entered quietly. Princess, I know this is difficult, but you must consider, humans are not what we imagine. They have strengths of their own, courage, creativity, adaptability. Perhaps you will see value where you least expect it. Liara shook her head. I am a princess. I do not adapt. I command. I do not follow. Valen smiled gently. Perhaps, princess, the greatest lessons come when we are forced to follow. Even briefly. Liara did not respond. She was not ready to admit even the smallest possibility. She would go to Earth, but she would do so on her own terms. She would not be a subject to the humans. She would remain superior, cleverer, more capable than anyone they had ever met. Days passed, and finally, the moment arrived. The craft that would take her to Earth stood gleaming under the Zintheran sun. Its surface shimmered with advanced alloys, powered by energy sources far beyond anything humans had ever imagined. It was elegant, precise, perfect, like Zinthera itself. Liara stepped aboard, her robes flowing behind her. She took one last look at her home planet, her mind heavy with emotion. Part of her hated this journey. Part of her, though, felt a strange thrill. The unknown was terrifying, but also exciting. As the craft lifted from the palace grounds, she felt a rush of wind, of speed, and of possibility. Zinthera shrank behind her, a world of order and rules. Ahead lay Earth, a world of chaos, unpredictability, and life she had never truly seen. And waiting there, a human, unaware of the storm about to enter his life. Liara clenched her fists, a mixture of determination and defiance burning in her chest. She would not be humiliated. She would not be defeated. She would go to Earth as a princess, and she would show the humans, and perhaps even herself, that she was not to be underestimated. Little did she know, her greatest challenge would not be about power, prestige, or intelligence. It would be about understanding, trust, and a bond that could bridge the vast distance between two worlds. The stars stretched before her, endless and shimmering. Liara felt a strange sensation, a flicker of curiosity, perhaps even excitement. Earth awaited, and so did the human who, by fate or law, would change her life forever. The journey had begun, and nothing would ever be the same again. The craft hummed softly as it cut through the void of space. Inside, Princess Liara sat upright, her hands folded neatly in her lap. Her silver hair shimmered in the soft light, and her violet eyes glowed with a mixture of apprehension and curiosity. The stars outside seemed endless, and somewhere among them lay the blue planet she was to call home for the foreseeable future, Earth. Liara had read about humans, studied their habits, and analyzed every report her advisors had gathered over centuries. They were primitive, chaotic, and emotional. Their technology lagged far behind Zinthera's, and yet here she was, being sent to live among them. The craft shuddered as it entered Earth's atmosphere. Liara held herself steady, refusing to show any sign of fear. The planet's surface rushed up to meet them, a swirl of green forests, blue oceans, and brown cities. She had never seen a world so alive, so unpredictable. The landing was smooth, and the craft came to rest on a grassy field outside a city. Earth smelled strange, fresh and earthy, with a hint of metal and smoke. Liara stepped onto the soil, her elegant boots sinking slightly into the ground. For a moment she simply stood and observed. The wind tugged gently at her robes, and birds flew overhead. A young man approached, his steps careful but confident. He wore simple clothing, nothing like the flowing garments of Zinthera. His hair was dark and tousled, and his eyes were sharp, curious, and kind. "You must be Princess Liara," he said, his voice calm but steady. "I'm Ethan. I've been assigned to guide you and make sure you're comfortable here on Earth." Liara regarded him coolly. "I do not require comfort. I am a Zintheran princess. I am accustomed to everything." Ethan smiled faintly. "I understand, but even a princess might find some things different here. Let me show you around." Liara followed him, her posture rigid, her expression one of polite suspicion. Everywhere she looked, Earth seemed chaotic. Cars moved in strange patterns, humans walked quickly in all directions, and strange sounds filled the air. Music, voices, alarms, engines. Nothing was ordered. Nothing followed the precision of Zinthera. "This city is called Arcadia," Ethan explained as they walked. "It's a human city, one of many. You'll find it busy, noisy, and sometimes confusing. But humans are clever in their own way. They solve problems that machines cannot always predict." Liara's eyes narrowed. "Clever, you say? I see disorganization, chaos, and risk. How can that be considered clever?" Ethan chuckled softly. "Sometimes it's not about following rules or predicting outcomes perfectly. Sometimes it's about adapting, thinking quickly, and using what you have. Humans are flexible." Liara frowned. Flexibility was not a Zintheran virtue. Predictability, order, and logic were the keys to survival and success. How could these humans, so flawed by her standards, survive in the universe? Their first stop was Ethan's home, a small house by the edge of the city. It was modest, but it felt warm and alive. Plants grew in pots. Books were stacked in corners, and strange devices buzzed quietly on tables. "This is where you'll stay for now," Ethan said. "I've prepared everything for you. Your accommodations are comfortable, and you'll have everything you need." Liara stepped inside, her gaze sweeping over every detail. It was nothing like her palace. The walls were simple, the furniture plain, and the lighting soft and uneven. She tried to hide her distaste. To humans, this might be considered cozy. To her, it was primitive. "I can manage," she said simply. "Show me where I will sleep." Ethan led her to a small room. The bed was soft and low, the linens warm and clean. Liara's mind noted every detail, every imperfection. Nothing about this place matched Zinthera, but she would adapt. She had to. After settling in, Ethan suggested a walk in the city. Liara followed reluctantly, observing humans as they went about their lives. She watched children laughing, street vendors shouting, and people rushing to unknown destinations. The chaos made her uneasy, but also intrigued. "You will see," Ethan said, noticing her expression. "Humans may seem unpredictable, but there is a kind of intelligence here you cannot always measure." Liara raised an eyebrow. "Intelligence? I see randomness, not order." "Order is not the only measure of intelligence," Ethan replied. "Humans create, imagine, and adapt. Sometimes their strength comes from emotions you might consider illogical." Liara frowned but did not respond. She had no desire to admit that humans might have value. Not yet. They walked through a bustling market full of colors, smells, and sounds. Liara observed every stall, every interaction, every gesture. She noted how humans bargained, how they reacted to unexpected situations, how they worked together despite the lack of structure. It's Strange, she admitted quietly to herself. But there is something here. Ethan smiled. You're beginning to notice. Humans may be messy, but they are resilient. And sometimes they surprise you. Liara glanced at him sharply. You mean like you? Ethan laughed. Perhaps, but not all surprises are predictable. As the day went on, Liara began to experience Earth in ways she had never imagined. She tasted food she could not name, smelled scents that reminded her of nothing on Zinthera, and heard music that stirred emotions she had never felt. Each moment was a lesson, each sensation a challenge to her carefully ordered mind. By evening, they returned to Ethan's home. Liara felt a strange fatigue, not physical but mental. Humans were exhausting. Their unpredictability, their constant emotions, their unplanned actions, it was all overwhelming. Yet, she could not deny that. There was something alive about this world, something vibrant, something real. Ethan noticed her thoughtful expression. It's a lot to take in, he said softly. Earth can feel overwhelming at first, but you'll adapt. Liara remained silent, contemplating his words. Perhaps adaptation was not impossible. Perhaps she could learn to survive here, but she would not let herself like it. She would remain superior. She would remain a princess. That night, as Liara lay on the unfamiliar bed, she stared at the ceiling. Stars twinkled outside the window, distant yet familiar. She thought of Zinthera, of the crystal halls, of her family, and of the bet that had sent her here. And then she thought of Ethan, ordinary, human, clever in ways she did not yet understand. Clenched her fists beneath the blankets. She would not be defeated by a human. She would not be humbled. And yet, a small part of her could not ignore the curiosity that burned within her. What was it about humans that made them so different, so alive, so capable? Liara did not know the answer, but she knew one thing for certain. Her journey on Earth had only just begun. And if this human, Ethan, thought she would be easy to manage, he was in for a surprise. The night passed slowly. Liara dreamed not of Zinthera, but of Earth, of the chaos, the laughter, the struggles, and the unexpected beauty. She dreamed of a world that challenged her every expectation and forced her to see life in ways she had never imagined. By morning, she was ready. Ready to face this strange planet, ready to face humans, and ready, though she would never admit it, to face Ethan. For Princess Liara, the challenge of Earth had begun, and with it a story of discovery, friendship, and perhaps something more. The princess stepped outside once more, her robes flowing in the gentle wind. The city stretched before her, full of life, full of unpredictability, full of lessons, waiting to be learned. Liara's violet eyes narrowed, not with anger but with determination. She would conquer this world, not with force, but with her mind, her spirit, and her unyielding will. And somewhere deep inside, a small spark of curiosity flickered, a spark that would grow into something she could not yet imagine. The journey on Earth had truly begun. Days passed in the city of Arcadia, and Princess Liara slowly began to adjust to life on Earth. She was still cautious, still wary of every human she met, but the chaos of this world was no longer entirely frightening. In fact, it intrigued her. She found herself studying the humans, not just observing their actions but trying to understand the reasons behind them. Ethan continued to guide her, patiently answering her questions and introducing her to Earth's many wonders. Together they visited markets, parks, and libraries. Liara marveled at the variety of foods, the complexity of human machines, and the limitless ideas contained within the city's books. You see, Liara, Ethan said one afternoon as they walked past a bustling street filled with artists, musicians, and street performers. Humans may not be perfect, but they are creative. They invent solutions when none exist, and they find joy in ways that logic cannot always predict. Liara watched a painter blend colors on a canvas, her eyes narrowing as she studied his technique. The colors, they do not match any known spectrum pattern, she said. Yet the humans seem pleased with it. Exactly, Ethan replied with a grin. Sometimes humans rely on feelings rather than rules. It doesn't make their work less valuable. It makes it unique. Liara frowned, but a small part of her mind began to wonder if he was right. On Zinthera, precision was everything. There was a correct way to do everything. Humans had no such rules, yet they created things that felt alive. It was confusing, but also fascinating. One day, Ethan suggested they visit a nearby research lab. Liara's curiosity piqued immediately. She had grown up around Zintheran technology, where every machine was perfect, predictable, and efficient. Humans, by contrast, were still learning, still experimenting. Inside the lab, Liara saw humans working with machines that seemed crude to her eyes, yet the devices performed impressive tasks. Robots clumsily carried supplies, computers analyzed data, and humans adjusted every detail with their hands, correcting errors and improvising solutions. Why do they do it this way? Liara asked, pointing to a human scientist manually adjusting a robot's arm. Ethan smiled. Because humans learn through trial and error. They may make mistakes, but they also discover things no one could plan in advance. Their intelligence is flexible, not fixed. Liara stared at the robot. It moved imperfectly, yet it worked. She had to admit, even silently to herself, that there was a kind of cleverness in it she had never seen on Zinthera. Over the following days, Liara and Ethan spent more time together. He taught her simple human skills, how to cook, how to ride a bicycle, and even how to use a computer. She approached each lesson with her usual precision, but she could not ignore that Ethan's methods, though sometimes disorganized, were effective. Quackum. Humans make so many mistakes, Liara said one evening as they worked on a small experiment. It is illogical. How do you survive? Ethan laughed. We adapt. We find solutions even when things go wrong. Sometimes mistakes are the fastest way to learn. Liara's mind raced. Adaptation was not a word often used on Zinthera. She had been trained to plan, predict, and prevent mistakes before they happened. Yet here she saw humans succeed. Not in spite of mistakes, but because of them. You are learning quickly, Ethan said, noticing her thoughtful silence. Maybe more quickly than I expected. Liara's lips pressed into a thin line. I am observing, she said carefully. I am learning. But that does not mean I approve. Ethan chuckled. Fair enough. Approval comes later. Observation is the first step. One afternoon, while exploring the outskirts of the city, they stumbled upon a small park with a pond. Children played, ducks swam, and the wind carried the laughter of families. Liara knelt by the water's edge, watching ripples form when stones were tossed. She noticed how each stone created different patterns, unpredictable yet beautiful. Your humans have a strange way of interacting with nature, she said softly. On Zinthera, we control everything. Water flows only where it is directed. Fish remain in their tanks. Everything is precise. Ethan sat beside her. And yet here, life is alive because it is free to move. Unpredictability allows beauty. Chaos allows growth. Liara frowned, but she could not deny the truth in his words. The ripples danced across the pond, reflecting sunlight and sky. They were imperfect, ever-changing, yet captivating. As days turned into weeks, Liara began to let her guard down around Ethan. She still maintained her regal composure, but she found herself laughing at his jokes, admiring his quick thinking, and even enjoying the small chaotic pleasures of Earth. One evening, a sudden storm swept through the city. Lightning flashed and heavy rain poured down. People ran for cover, struggling to protect their belongings. Ethan grabbed an umbrella and offered it to Liara. Come on, he said. We'll find shelter. Liara hesitated for a moment, then accepted. As they ran through the streets, dodging puddles and wind-blown debris, She realized how exhilarating it was to face the storm with someone she trusted. On Zinthera, storms were controlled, predictable, and safe. Here she felt alive. Finally, they reached a small cafe, drenched but laughing. Liara shook water from her hair, and Ethan handed her a towel. "You humans are strange," she said, smiling despite herself. "You make chaos seem enjoyable." Ethan shrugged. "Maybe it is. Maybe it's not about controlling everything, but about experiencing it fully." Liara nodded slowly, feeling a spark of understanding. Humans were different. Their strength was not in perfection, but in adaptability, creativity, and emotion. And Ethan, he embodied all of it. Over the following weeks, their bond grew. Liara began sharing stories of Zinthera, its cities, technology, and culture. Ethan listened intently, fascinated by the tales of a world so advanced and ordered. In return, he shared Earth's history, its art, its music, and the small wonders that made life here meaningful. One evening, Liara asked a question she had never dared ask aloud. Why do humans value imperfection? Ethan considered it. Because imperfection makes life real. It makes choices matter. It makes experiences memorable. Perfection is safe, but it is also boring. Humans grow through challenges, mistakes, and emotions. Liara's violet eyes softened. She began to realize that humans were not weak. They were strong in ways she had never appreciated. They survived, thrived, and created despite chaos and unpredictability. And they felt deeply, something Zintherans rarely allowed themselves. The first real challenge came unexpectedly. A small fire broke out in a nearby building. Smoke rose into the sky and people panicked. Liara's first instinct was to analyze, calculate, and plan. Ethan's was to act quickly. Together, they helped guide people to safety, using both Zintheran logic and human improvisation. Liara directed people calmly while Ethan helped carry those in need and find quick solutions. By the time the fire department arrived, no one was hurt, and the fire was contained. Liara looked at Ethan, a mixture of respect and surprise in her eyes. "You humans, you are capable of more than I imagined," she admitted. Ethan smiled. "And you, Princess, are capable of more than you thought. We make a good team." Liara nodded slowly, feeling a warmth she had never felt with anyone before. Humans were unpredictable, yes, but they were also brave, resourceful, and worthy of trust. And Ethan, ordinary, clever, and kind, had shown her the truth of it. That night, as Liara returned to her room, she reflected on everything she had learned. Humans were not inferior. They were different. And differences, she realized, could teach her far more than she had ever expected. For the first time, Liara felt a sense of excitement for the future. Earth was no longer just a punishment. It was a world full of possibilities, challenges, and lessons waiting to be discovered. And at the center of it all was Ethan, a human she had once dismissed but now respected, trusted, and perhaps admired. The princess lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. Her thoughts were filled with the chaos of Earth, the laughter of its people, and the lessons she had learned. She no longer saw this world as merely strange or inferior. She saw it as a place of growth, of opportunity, and of connection. The journey of understanding had begun. And with Ethan by her side, Liara knew that the adventure would only grow more remarkable. For Princess Liara, Earth was no longer a challenge to endure. It was a world to explore, and perhaps a home she had never expected to find. Days on Earth had begun to blend together for Princess Liara, yet nothing felt ordinary. Every morning brought new discoveries, challenges, and lessons about the humans she had once considered inferior. She was learning patience, creativity, and adaptability, the very qualities Zintherans rarely needed to value. And though she would never admit it aloud, she was beginning to trust Ethan more than anyone she had ever known. It was during a bright, clear morning that the first signs of trouble appeared. Liara was studying Earth's weather patterns from a small observatory Ethan had built when a strange signal appeared on one of the screens. It was faint, but consistent. A probe, unlike anything native to Earth, was approaching. Liara's Zintheran instincts flared immediately. She knew this was not a natural occurrence. "Ethan," she said, her voice tense. "Look at this, something is coming. I cannot identify it." Ethan leaned over her shoulder, adjusting his glasses. "It looks like some sort of unmanned craft, but it's too precise. It's not like Earth technology." Liara's eyes narrowed. "It is not Earth. It may be a scout, a spy, or worse. We must act." The human looked at her with calm determination. "Then we act. Together." Liara felt a small flicker of admiration. Ethan, with all his human simplicity, remained steady under pressure. She could rely on him, at least for now. The probe landed near the outskirts of the city. It was small, metallic, and sleek, unlike any human machine. Liara examined it carefully through the observatory's sensors. Its energy signature was unfamiliar but distinctly alien, something she recognized from Zintheran technology, though heavily modified. "This is serious," Liara said, feeling a knot of worry. "It is not just a curiosity. Someone is watching us or preparing for something more." Ethan nodded. "We need to figure out who it belongs to, and fast." They hurried to the site, blending in with the morning crowds. The probe emitted a low hum as it moved, scanning its surroundings. Liara studied its patterns, calculating its trajectory, and predicting its next movements. Ethan, meanwhile, observed the environment, noting human tools, obstacles, and potential ways to interfere if necessary. "Stop," Liara commanded in Zintheran, though no one else could hear. "It will try to adapt to our actions. Predict, then act." Ethan grinned. "Predicting is your specialty. I'll follow your lead." Working together, they managed to disable the probe temporarily, preventing it from sending data. Liara's mind raced. Whoever had sent this probe knew of her presence on Earth. The implications were frightening. Could Zinthera be at risk? Could humans be in danger? Back at Ethan's lab, they analyzed the probe carefully. Liara tapped on her holographic interface, revealing hidden codes and patterns embedded in the device. "It's Zintheran in origin," she whispered, frowning. "But altered. Someone on Zinthera or beyond wants to spy on Earth." Ethan's eyes widened. "So this is bigger than we thought. We're not just dealing with curiosity. This is a threat." Liara clenched her fists. The very thought of danger reaching Earth stirred her protective instincts. She had come here unwillingly, yet now she felt responsible. Humans, despite their imperfections, deserved safety. And Ethan, ordinary, clever, brave, deserved protection. "We need to warn Zinthera," she said. "But I cannot reveal everything. It may create panic." Ethan nodded. "Then we handle it quietly, together." As they prepared defenses and monitored the skies, Liara's thoughts drifted to Zinthera itself. Her cousin Zarin had orchestrated her marriage as punishment. But was he also behind this? Could her family be involved in this plot? Or was it someone else entirely? Days passed with tension and vigilance. Liara trained herself to move faster, think sharper, and anticipate problems before they arose. Ethan's human creativity complemented her Zintheran precision perfectly. They built small drones, shields, and warning systems, preparing for whatever might come next. Then one evening, a message arrived, encoded in Zintheran symbols, sent directly to Liara. She recognized the sender. Immediately, her cousin Zarin. "Liara," the message read, "you are far from home. Do not think that your adventure with humans will protect you. Your failure must serve its purpose. Return or face the consequences." Liara's eyes narrowed. His words were threatening but also revealing. He was behind this. Her bet. Her punishment, the spies. They were all part of a plan. She realized then that her journey on Earth was more than just a lesson. It was a test of loyalty, intelligence, and courage. Ethan noticed her silence. "What is it?" he asked. Liara took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. "It is a warning. From my cousin, Zarin. He wants to control me, even here. Ethan frowned. So, what do we do? Liara stood, her posture rigid with determination. We fight, not with weapons, but with knowledge, strategy, and trust. I will not allow him to harm humans, or us. Together they worked through the night, analyzing Zarin's message and preparing countermeasures. Liara marveled at Ethan's ability to improvise, to think beyond rules, to adapt. Zintharans were trained to follow logic precisely, but humans could turn chaos into advantage, and Ethan embodied that perfectly. By morning, they had discovered the full scope of the threat. Zarin had allies, agents who were observing Earth, waiting for the right moment to intervene. Their plan was to manipulate humans into creating panic, which would give Zinthara political leverage over Earth. This is serious, Liara said. We must act quickly, but we cannot do it alone. Ethan nodded. Then we gather allies, humans who understand the situation, and we use what we've learned from each other. Liara paused. She realized something important. She trusted Ethan, not just as a guide or companion, but as a partner. His human intuition complemented her Zintharan logic perfectly. They were stronger together. The first confrontation came sooner than expected. One of Zarin's agents, disguised as a human scientist, attempted to sabotage a power station in the city. Liara and Ethan detected the anomaly through the systems they had prepared. Move quickly, Liara ordered. We must stop them before anyone is hurt. They raced to the location, combining Zintharan precision and human improvisation. Liara calculated optimal paths and predicted the agent's moves, while Ethan distracted and redirected humans to safety. Their teamwork was flawless. Finally, they cornered the agent. Liara's eyes blazed with authority. You will leave this planet immediately. Your mission ends now. The agent hesitated, then fled, clearly unprepared for the combined force of a Zintharan princess and a human who refused to be intimidated. Ethan turned to Liara, breathing heavily. We did it. We stopped them. Liara nodded, but her mind was racing. Zarin's threat was not gone. It was only postponed. She realized that she faced a choice: return to Zinthara and obey her cousin, or stay on Earth and continue protecting a world she had once considered inferior. That night, Liara stood by the window, looking at the city lights. The wind carried the sounds of humans living, working, and laughing. She thought of Zinthara, her family, her obligations, and her past life. And she thought of Earth, chaotic, vibrant, and alive, full of people who were brave, creative, and unexpectedly admirable. Ethan entered quietly, sensing her contemplation. What are you thinking? He asked. Liara hesitated. I am thinking about choices, about loyalty, about what is right and what is expected. Ethan smiled gently. Sometimes the right choice isn't the easiest, or the one that others expect. Sometimes it's the one you believe in. Liara nodded slowly, feeling the weight of her decision. She could not ignore her duty to Zinthara entirely, but she also could not abandon this world, or the humans she had come to respect. And she could not ignore Ethan, his courage, his cleverness, his trustworthiness. For the first time, Liara realized that her journey on Earth was not a punishment. It was a test, not of obedience, but of understanding, empathy, and heart. She turned to Ethan, her violet eyes meeting his. Then we continue. Together. Ethan grinned. Together. The storm outside subsided, leaving the city bathed in quiet moonlight. Liara felt a calm determination settle within her. She would face her cousin's schemes, protect Earth, and discover what humans, and perhaps Ethan, could truly teach her. For Princess Liara, the greatest challenge was no longer about proving superiority. It was about making choices, taking responsibility, and learning the meaning of trust. And with each passing day, she felt herself growing stronger, not just as a Zintharan princess, but as someone who could bridge two worlds and face whatever Trials came next. The journey of loyalty, courage, and understanding had only just begun. The tension in Arcadia had grown. Princess Liara and Ethan had spent days preparing for what they knew was coming. Zaren's plan was no longer subtle. His agents were moving openly, attempting to manipulate humans and gather control. Liara had realized that this was no longer a test of skill or courage. It was a test of trust, unity, and heart. "We have to act now," Liara said, standing over the control panels in Ethan's lab. The devices they had built hummed softly, ready to respond at a moment's notice. "If we delay, more people will be at risk. Zaren's influence will spread." Ethan nodded. "We've prepared as much as we can, and we're not alone. The humans we've trained, those who understand, are ready to help." Liara looked at him, her violet eyes sharp but calm. "I underestimated humans, and I underestimated you, Ethan, but now I know we can succeed. Together." Ethan smiled. "That's the plan, ready?" Liara nodded. Ready. Their first target was a central communication hub in the city. Zaren's agents were using it to spread misinformation and create panic. Liara and Ethan had devised a plan to stop them without harming anyone. Liara's Zintheran precision combined with Ethan's human adaptability made them an unstoppable team. They arrived at the hub under the cover of night. Shadows moved across the walls as humans and Zintheran sensors worked together to monitor the agents. Liara's eyes scanned every corner, every hallway, every potential hiding spot. "They're here," she whispered. Ethan nodded. "Follow, my lead. Distract, contain, and guide civilians to safety." Liara moved with calculated precision, her commands clear and decisive. Ethan improvised, blocking paths, rerouting agents, and keeping humans calm. They moved silently, swiftly, and efficiently, humans and Zintherans working as one. Suddenly, one of Zaren's agents attempted to disable a generator. Liara's sensors detected the disruption immediately. She moved faster than Ethan could. React, stopping the agent with a precise maneuver. "You will not succeed," Liara said firmly, her tone leaving no room for argument. The agent hesitated, stunned by her speed and focus. In that moment, Ethan sealed the exits, preventing escape. The agent realized defeat was inevitable and retreated, leaving the hub untouched. Liara and Ethan worked through the night, neutralizing every attempt to create chaos. By dawn, the city was safe. Humans had participated fully, guided by the lessons Liara and Ethan had taught them. She watched them, ordinary people, brave, clever, and united, and felt an unfamiliar warmth in her chest. As the first rays of sunlight touched the city, Liara received another message from Zaren. "You may have delayed me," it read, "but you cannot escape your duty. Return to Zinthera or your failure will bring ruin." Liara's jaw tightened. She had a choice: return to her home planet, obey her cousin, and let him continue manipulating events from afar, or stay on Earth and protect the people who had come to mean something to her. She turned to Ethan. "I must make a decision," she said quietly. Ethan placed a hand gently on her shoulder. "Whatever you choose, I'll support you. But remember what you've learned. What's right isn't always what's expected." Liara took a deep breath, thinking of Zinthera's precise order, her cousin's cunning, and the life she had built here on Earth. She thought of humans' courage, creativity, and unpredictability. And she thought of Ethan, the human who had become her partner, her friend, and perhaps something more. "I choose Earth," she said finally, "and I choose to protect it. Zaren will not control me or this world." Ethan smiled, relief and pride shining in his eyes. "Then we face him, together." The final confrontation came at the outskirts of the city, where Zaren himself had arrived to oversee his plan. His presence radiated authority and menace, but Liara felt no fear. She was no longer a princess in a cage. She was a leader, a protector, and a bridge between two worlds. "You dare defy me?" Zaren demanded, his voice sharp and commanding. "I do," Liara said firmly. I will not let you manipulate Earth or its people for your own gain. This ends now. Ethan stepped forward. And you're not doing this alone. Zarin smirked, assuming superiority. But Liara had anticipated this. With Ethan's help, she combined Zintheran's strategy with human unpredictability. They moved quickly, using traps, diversions, and clever tactics to outmaneuver Zarin's agents. For the first time, Zarin realized that Liara was no longer the same princess he had known. She was smarter, braver, and stronger, not just because of Zintheran's skill, but because she had learned the value of human creativity and courage. Cornered and outmatched, Zarin finally relented. Liara stepped forward, her voice steady and commanding. "This is over," she said. "You have lost, Zarin. Not because of anger or force, but because you underestimated the power of trust, unity, and understanding." Zarin's face hardened, but he could see the truth. Liara's growth was undeniable. She was no longer just a princess. She was a leader capable of bridging worlds. With Zarin's defeat, Earth was safe. Liara turned to the humans who had fought, alongside them, acknowledging their courage and creativity. She realized then that humans were not weak or inferior. They were capable, brave, and worthy of respect. Ethan approached, smiling. "We did it," he said simply. Liara nodded. "Yes. Together we did it." Later, a ceremony was held to celebrate the unity between humans and Zintherans. Liara and Ethan stood side by side, honored by both worlds. The city cheered, not just for the victory, but for the promise of friendship, understanding, and a future built on trust. Liara turned to Ethan, her violet eyes softening. "I underestimated humans," she admitted, "and I underestimated you. But now I see the truth. Strength is not only in perfection, it is in courage, adaptability, and the heart." Ethan smiled, taking her hand gently. "And I underestimated Zintherans too. But you've shown me the value of wisdom, patience, and guidance. We've learned from each other." The ceremony ended, and the city returned to its vibrant rhythm. Liara looked at the humans around her, the laughter, the work, the small acts of kindness, and felt a deep connection. She realized that Earth had become more than a home for a time. It had become a world she respected, cherished, and wanted to protect. That evening, as the sun set over the city, Liara and Ethan walked together. She reflected on her journey, from a princess punished for losing a bet to a leader who had forged unity between two worlds. She thought of the lessons learned: trust, courage, understanding, and the power of partnership. "You know," she said softly, "I never imagined I would find value in humans, or in this world. But I was wrong. You were right, Ethan. There is more to life than rules and perfection." Ethan looked at her, eyes warm. "And there's more to you than even Zinthera could teach. You've grown, Liara. Not just as a princess, but as someone who can make a difference." Liara smiled, a rare, genuine smile. "Then let us continue. Together." Ethan nodded. Together. And so, under the glow of Earth's evening sky, Princess Liara and Ethan stood side by side, not as teacher and student, not as alien and human, but as partners, friends, and perhaps something even deeper. The bet that had seemed a punishment had become the beginning of a journey that would unite worlds, hearts, and destinies. Liara had learned that strength was not only in intelligence or power, but in understanding, courage, and connection. She had learned that humans, with all their imperfections, could teach lessons no amount of precision could. And she had learned that sometimes the greatest victories came not from winning games, but from choosing to embrace the unknown. And the people who made it worth facing. The journey was complete, yet the adventure was only beginning. For Liara and Ethan, Earth was no longer a challenge to endure. It was a home to protect, a world to explore, and a bond to cherish. And together, they knew, Nothing would ever be the same again,